So now I'm going to record Daf Ayin Beis Part 2. We're starting at the last word on Ayin Beis Amid Aleph, and there is a concept called misasek. Misasek means when I intend to do Act A, inadvertently I do Act B, and misasek on Shabbos is potter. There's a machlokes achreinim if there's any isser whatsoever. Anyway, I also want to point out that, let's say, in chaylev or arayos, misasek is chayiv, because even though you wanted to do Act A, but you ended up doing Act B, but in the end you had hanoah, there was a physical hanoah from it, so you're chayiv. Anyway, let's get started. Itmer, it was said, niskavein lagbia esat holish. Somebody wanted to pick up something which is disattached. He bent down to pick up a knife. By mistake, as he was picking up the knife, he cut a tomato plant which was attached. He's potter because his intent was to do lifting, and he ended up doing harvesting. What about lachtach asatolish v'chatach asamechuber? What if a person took a knife and he wanted to slice a tomato, but he didn't realize that the tomato actually was still attached to the vine, so he ended up harvesting? Rava says he's potter, and Abaye Amar Abaye says that he's chayiv. Rava Amar Potter, Rava says this is also considered misasek. The haloi niskavin lechaticha de'sura. It was not his intent to do a cut which is prohibited. The cut that's prohibited is called harvesting. He wanted to do slicing. He thought he was slicing a tomato. He ended up doing harvesting, and that's called misasek. Abaye Amar, I'm sorry, that's not misasek. He's chayiv. Because he intended to cut, and cut he did. So therefore, even though he intended to cut a tomato which he thought was disattached, and he ended up cutting a tomato that was attached, Abaye says that's not misasek, because cutting is cutting. Amar Rava, so Rava says, Mana aminala. I want to prove my point that on Shabbos you're going to be potter if you wanted to cut a tomato which you thought was disattached, and you ended up cutting a tomato which was still attached to the vine. So there's a long brisa here which will need analysis. It's easy. And in the end, Rava will try to make his point. So there's a brisa, the Tanya, the brisa says, Chaimer b'Shabbos mishar mitzvahs. Shabbos has a stringency over other mitzvahs, v'chaimer shar mitzvahs mishabbos. And there's a stringency in other mitzvahs over Shabbos. Chaimer Shabbos mishar mitzvahs. Shabbos is more stringent than other mitzvahs. Shah Shabbos also shtayim behelamechot chayav al kolachas v'achas. As we know, on Shabbos, if somebody would harvest and grind in one lapse of memory, he didn't know that grinding was asur, he didn't know that harvesting was asur, he's going to be chayiv two chatois. However, mashenken b'shar mitzvahs and other mitzvahs which we'll have to see soon, you're only going to be chayiv one. B'chaimer, there's a chumer, shar mitzvahs mishabbos, other mitzvahs have a stringency over Shabbos, shar b'shar mitzvahs shogag v'lem eschav m'chayiv, doing something unintentionally, b'shar mitzvahs will be m'chayiv yuachatas, mashenken b'Shabbos, on Shabbos you'll be potter. So this whole brisa needs clarification from top to bottom. So we start clarifying. Amar Mar, you said Chaimer Shabbos mishar mitzvahs. There's a stringency in Shabbos over other mitzvahs. Shah Shabbos asa shtayim behelam echad. On Shabbos, if you both harvested and ground in one lapse of memory, you didn't know that harvesting and grinding is aser. Chayiv al kalachas v'achas. You're chayiv two chatois, one for harvesting, one for grinding. Mashenken b'shar mitzvahs, as opposed to other prohibitions. Echidami, what's the case? As I just said, what happens if he harvests and he grinds in a lapse of memory, not knowing that these two malachas are aser, and you're chayiv too, and the kavasoga bishar mitzvahs, and let's say if we parallel it to other mitzvahs, achal chaylev v'dam, if he ate chaylev and dam, not knowing that chaylev and dam are aser, hachatarti mechayiv, hachatarti mechayiv. In both cases, you'll be chayiv two chatois. Here you'll be chayiv two chatois for kaitzer and toichen, and here you'll be chayiv two chatois for chaylev and dam. Elo shar mitzvahs loy mechayiv elo chada. So what's the case in other mitzvahs where you only chayiv one? Dochal chaylev v'chaylev. One lapse of memory, he ate one kazais of chaylev, and then another kazais of chaylev. And since it's in one lapse of memory, you're chayiv only one. Well, the kavosek abi Shabbos, by Shabbos, it's the same thing. David ktsiru ktsira. He harvested a shear of a greigeres, and then he harvested another shear of a greigeres, and both were done in one lapse of memory, not knowing that harvesting is aser. Here you'll be chayiv one chatas for the two kazayim of chaylev, And here you'll be chayiv for the 2 groigers, or the groigers shiurim of harvesting that you did. So the Gemara says, Lo'ilam da'avad k'tzir etchina. So, okay, Shabbos is speaking where you harvested and you ground, and that's why you're chayiv too, because harvesting and grinding are 2 different malachos. And ma she'enkein b'shar mitzvahs, when we compare it to other mitzvahs, we're talking about avodah zarah. K'dir Rabami dam Rabami zibech v'kiter v'nisach. If somebody was not aware that you're not allowed to slaughter to an avodah zarah, or you're not allowed to burn offerings for an avodah zarah, or you're not allowed to pour wine for the avodah zarah, and you did it b'halama achas, in one lapse of memory, ein chayiv alachas. You only chayiv 1 chatas. There is chiluk malachas l'Shabbos, and there's no chiluk avodas b'avodah zarah. So all of them that are done different avodas in one lapse of memory is chayiv 1 chatas. Okay, we started. So how did you explain the first part of the brayse about avodah zarah? The difference between Shabbos and avodah zarah. K'tzir and tchina b'Shabbos is 2 times 1. However, zvicha, haktara, and nisach b'avodah zarah is 1 times 3. It's all 1. Okay, we'll continue. Aim a sefer. Let's go further. Chaymer b'shar mitzvahs, and then the brayse said there's a stringency in other mitzvahs. Sheb'shar mitzvahs shagag b'lo mischav mechayiv. Unintentional will be chayiv. Mashenkin b'Shabbos shagag b'lo mischav is Mashenkin b'Shabbos. Shabbos, unintentional, will be potter. Explain. Hey Chidami, what's the case of unintentional b'avodah zarah that will be chayiv? Ilaim kasaver beis hakneses hu v'shtach v'la harei liba l'shamayim. Somebody goes into a room, thinks it's a shul, and he goes anachnu kairin, and he does kairin thinking he's bowing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he's not chayiv anything. He's not going to be chayiv in that case. Maybe he saw a statue of the king and he bowed to it. So again, what's the case? If he believes that it's an object of worship and meziru, then he's a mezir. It's not a chatas. If he's just bowing to it out of respect to the king, and laf klum, he's not chayiv. So what's the case? That b'shar mitzvah shogag b'leim is chav and is chayiv. Let's try again. Ella, what about me'ahava me'ira? Let's say a Jew loves somebody, or he fears somebody, and because of the love and the fear, he thought it's okay to bow to this avodah zarah, just to do this other guy a favor. So maybe that's going to be the case that's chayiv. So ani chala abaye domer chayiv. So according to Abaye or chayiv, okay, so that's a case where unintentional is going to be chayiv avodah zarah. El Rava domer potter. According to Rava, says that you're potter if you're just bowing in order to do a guy a favor, because either you like him or you're afraid of him. So Michael and Maimer. So what's the case of unintentional b'avodah zarah that's going to be chayiv? Ella b'aymer muter. Maybe it means somebody who thought you're allowed to worship avodah zarah, he converted, and the Dayanim never told him that it's usher to worship avodah zarah. He then grew up amongst Goyim, and therefore aymer muter, he thought it's muter. So b'avodah zarah is going to be chayiv korban chatas. And mashenkin b'Shabbos the poter legamri. What about the same guy who converted and didn't know there's an Isser Shabbos? So what didn't he know? He didn't know there's an Isser Shabbos, and he didn't know the Malachas were Isser. What? And he's going to be potter? Ad kan loy boy minei Rav and Rav Nachman. If you remembered, we had this twice already. Rav had asked Rav Nachman, what happens if somebody both forgets that it's Shabbos and he forgets the Malachas are Isser? So he has a lapse in both. The question was, should he be chayiv 1 chatas because he doesn't know it's Shabbos? Should we be mechayiv 2 chatas because he doesn't know, for instance, that these 2 malachas are aser? Nobody had a havamina that he should be poter legamri. So I'm stuck. What's the case of unintentional that b'shara mitzvahs will be chayiv and b'Shabbos will be poter? El olav. So we must explain. Reisha b'avodas kachavim. The first case is avodah zarah, and I will repeat just for chazara's sake. The Reisha says that if a person does k'tzir and tchina, because he forgot that k'tzir and tchina is aser b'Shabbos, it's 2 chatois. But on the other hand, b'avodah zarah, if he does zvicha and haktorah and nisach b'avodah zarah, he's only going to be chayiv 1, because there's no multiple chatois b'avodas avodah zarah. And Sefer will be speaking b'shar mitzvahs. Now the second part of the brayse will be talking about something else. So explain. So perhaps here comes Rav with his punchline. Shogag b'leim iskav b'shar mitzvahs zechidami. What's the case of unintentional b'shar mitzvahs that you're chayiv? The savar the shuman hub. He thought that it was kosher fat and he wanted to eat it. V'acholei, and he ate it, and he found out that it was chaylev. And you're chayiv. Why? because that's called misasek, but misasek, when it comes to chaylev, is chayiv, as I said in my outline, because in the end you had hanoah from it. Mashenkin b'Shabbos the potter. But by Shabbos, what's the case that you potter? Then it's chav lachta chasatolish v'chata chasam chuber potter. If we're going to compare apples to apples, so the case by Shar mitzvahs will be where he intended to eat, but he intended to eat something which was kosher, shuman, and he ended up eating something that's not kosher, chaylev, and there you're chayiv. As opposed to if a person intended to cut, what did he want? He wanted to cut a tomato, which he thought was slicing the tomato. In the end, he cut, but he cut a tomato which was still attached on the vine. He ended up harvesting, and in that case, you're potter, right? So you see, b'shar mitzvahs, eating to eating will be chayiv, and here cutting to cutting will be potter. So Rava said that was my point. Abaye says no. No, the case by Shar Mitzvah says if somebody thought there was some saliva, and saliva is not something that you eat. There, the act of consuming saliva is called swallowing. In the end, it wasn't saliva; it was some dissolved fat. Dissolved fat is something that you eat. So there, you did two different acts. You were thinking of doing the act of swallowing. In the end, you ended up doing the act of eating. And the halacha is there, you're chayiv. Why? Because as we said, misasek b'chalovim, misasek by in case of chaylev is chayiv because you had hanoah. Mashenkin b'Shabbos the potter. When are you going to be potter for misasek on Shabbos? Then it's chav lagbias atolish v'chata chasam chuber potter. In the same parallel case by Shabbos, you wanted to pick up a knife, which is an act of lifting. In the end, as you were picking up the knife, you ended up cutting a tomato plant, which was harvesting. So there it's called misasek, because when you're doing one act and you end up doing a different act, that's called misasek. So by chaylev, if you intended to the act of swallowing, you ended up doing the act of eating, you're chayiv, because in the end you had anoah. But by Shabbos, if you wanted to do the act of lifting, and instead you did harvesting, that's the case as Abai that you're potter. But if you wanted to cut a tomato, in the end you ended up harvesting the tomato because the tomato was still attached to the plant, so Abai says that you'll be chayiv. So that's the end of that piece. We have a machlokes. Everybody says misasek is potter b'Shabbos, but Abai says misasek is only when it's two different kinds of an act. You wanted to do an act of lifting a knife, and instead of lifting, you ended up harvesting a tomato. But if you wanted to slice a tomato and you ended up harvesting the tomato, that's too similar and it's not called misasek. And Rava considers that misasek as well. Regarding chaylev, there could also be two similar disputes. I mean, according to Rava, the case of chaylev is where you wanted to swallow, which is act. According to Rava, it was you wanted to eat shuman and you ended up eating chaylev. So eating to eating over there, you're chayiv because you had anoah. Mashenka b'Shabbos, cutting to cutting, you're potter because you wanted to cut something that's tolish. You ended up cutting something that's mechuber. And Abai says no. In the case of chaylev, you wanted to swallow saliva and you ended up eating chaylev. So therefore, it's one act to a different act. Over there, you're chayiv because you had a no. But by Shabbos, if you wanted to do the lifting of a knife, you ended up harvesting, then you're potter. But if you wanted to cut the tomato and you ended up harvesting the tomato, according to Abai, that's not called misasek and you're chayiv. See if I have time to discuss a nice piece of Torah. We discussed that according to Rabbi Yochanan, Yediyas Machalkas. Somebody ate Kazayas A, and then he ate Kazayas B in one lapse of memory. Then he realized that he ate Kazayas A, he's Chayev Achatas. And when he realizes that he ate Kazayas B, he's Chayev another Chatas. That's how the Rambam paskins it, Yediyas Machalkas. There's a Stiris Rambam. The Rambam writes in Perik Vav, Halacha Yud Aleph, if a person ate two kazaysim of chaylev in a single state of unawareness, and then after discovering that he ate the first piece of chaylev, he then ate a third piece of chaylev, and he brought a chatas for the first, it's mechaper for the first and the second. The question is what again? He ate the first and the second in the same lapse of memory. But then he realized that he ate the first. So why does the Rambam say that he's in his chaper for both? Because according to Rabbi Yochanan and the Rambam Pascal like Rabbi Yochanan, Yediyas are Machalkas. So there's three possible terutzim, and they're a bit complex. The Kesef Mishnah explains, and the Stipler explains it further, that a man who ate Kazayas A, and then he ate Kazayas B in one lapse of memory. And then he realized that he ate kazayas A, and afterwards he realized that he ate kazayas B. So every realization became a chiyuv for another chatas. When he realized A, he's chayv one chatas. When he realized B, he's chayv another chatas. That's Rabbi Yochanan Shita. However, here what happened was when he realized A, he brought a korban for A. But at the time that he brought the korban for A, he had not yet realized that he had eaten B. Therefore, he never incurred a special chiyuv chatas for B. So if he didn't incur a new chiyuv chatas for B, and he brought a korban for A, and A and B were done in the same lapse of memory, the same way that the korban is mechaper for the A that was eaten that lapse of memory, it'll be mechaper for B as well. One more time. The first Rambam that he said that it's going to be 2 chatois is because before he brought any korbanos, he had a yediyah of A and a yediyah of B. Each yediyah was mechayiv from a separate korban chatas. In the second Rambam, he ate A, and in the same lapse of memory he ate B, and then he brought a korban for A. So when he brought a korban for A, he had not yet realized. He realized that he ate A, and he brought a korban for A, and at that time he had not yet realized that he ate B. So he never incurred a korban for B. Since he didn't incur a separate korban for B, B will be covered by the same korban of A, because A and B were eaten in the same lapse of memory. The Maribei Rav has a different teretz. He says that the first Rambam is talking where he ate a kazais of chaylev, and then later ate another kazais of chaylev. So therefore, the yediyah of one and the yediyah of the other is mechayiv and 2 chatois. The second Rambam is speaking where he ate 2 kazaisim at one time. If he ate 2 kazaisim at one time, so then the Rambam agrees that even though he realized that he ate 1 kazayis, but he ate the other kazayis at the same time, and then he'll have coverage with 1 chatas. Okay, let's leave it at that. Mazel tikavach. We should hear B'suras Taivis from everyone, and Kadosh Baruch Hu should help that things should improve very quickly and very soon for all of us.